Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, so welcome everyone. And I'm just going to start with our mission of Women Who Code. So we all are on the same page. Women Who Code empower diverse women to excel in technology career, and our wide variety of talks for today should help us support more women excel in technology career in general. So that's the overall mission of Women Who Code. What is our vision? Our vision is we want to encourage diversity, a tech industry where diverse women and historically excluded people thrive at every level. So we just want to support women at every level in their progression in their careers. So that's our mission pretty much, and our vision. These are our values. So I'm not gonna read all the values, but it's just there for you to understand what our values and what do we actually genuinely are here for and are part of our core value for Women Who Code. We want to support diversity. We also want to encourage for inclusion and yeah, just celebrate all the wins and break barriers. Something that I think worth highlighting here is that how much Women Who Code as an organization is growing. So right now we are almost like, yeah, you can see like so many members in 147 countries. So we have increased a lot from few countries. So now we are in almost 147 countries across the world. So the organization is really growing and we are getting a very good support throughout the world. So which is really great to see. And these are the countries where Women Who Code is actually running their network successfully. Code of conduct. Yeah, I just want to highlight here our code of conduct and the policy for today's event. Women Who Code is an inclusive community. We are dedicated to providing an empowering experience for everybody who participates and supports the community, regardless of the gender identity, expression, sexual orientation, physical appearance, ability, body size, race, ethnicity, age, religion, socioeconomic status, caste, creed, politics, affiliation, or preferred programming language. We do support everyone, and everyone is encouraged to participate, ask questions, share opinion, and yeah. So that's a pretty much code of conduct. And something I also want to highlight here is that this session is being recorded, so you are encouraged to show your face and be on the camera. But if you're not comfortable, you can obviously turn off your video and raise hand if you have any question. Feel free to share question in the chat as well. Go on unmute if you want, if you feel comfortable asking the question. So all kind of participation is welcome. Moving on to another one. Yes, speakers intro. We have a pretty diverse speaker panel for today with diverse topics in the tech, from the tech industry. Our first speaker for the you might see so yeah, the speakers that you see on the right and the speakers on the flyer. So we had one speaker who had to drop off. So and then we onboarded another speaker, and that's Rajshri. Thank you so much for volunteering at the last minute. So 3 speakers for today's event. We have first speaker is CC, and CC is going to be talking about coping strategies and overcoming imposter syndrome, which is, I think, a very important topic in today's world to know how to overcome imposter syndrome. We all have been there, struggle with that every day. So CC is gonna share some light on that. A little bit about CC, I wanted to share that CC is a software engineer, a DevOps cloud software engineer, and passionate about creatively solving problems using technology. She has ample years of experience in building mobile, web, cloud solutions. She has worked with entrepreneurs and quite a number of startups over the years. So CC is coming up with a lot of experience to us. Feel free to ask any question that you have for CC in the chat. And CC also strongly advocate for women in tech. She works for Visa, and I have a little bit description about Visa here. What is Visa? She works for Visa Europe. What is that? What do they do? We would have heard about Visa, and we do transactions through Visa card. So she's a DevOps engineer with Visa, providing digital payment systems for card users over the world. So securing the transactions in a way. Really good job there, CC. So that's about CC. And then we have another speaker, Yang. She's joining us from Vancouver, and she will be talking about graphs, all about relationship building and introduction to graph database and open source community. A bit of a background description about bio about Yang is Yang is from Vancouver, and she's a backend software developer with Improving Vancouver, working in the field of graph database. Uh, she started work with JDBC driver to connect to graph database and stuff like that. And then what I have here for Yang, yeah, outside of work, that's important. She enjoys hiking when the weather is nice, obviously, because she's from Vancouver, and she also likes playing video games when she's stuck inside. That's cool. Another speaker, last but not the least, we have Rajshri Roy. Rajshri is joining us all the way from New York City, and she will be talking about a very interesting topic, VS Code using Python. So Rajshri's experience is she's been passionate about working with data and uncovering valuable insights. As a data analyst at Amazon, she collaborated with a lot of people, data-driven solutions for marketing and analytics. So she has worked on mostly the business reporting side using the SQL, Tableau, and Python as a programming language. And yeah, so that's pretty much about Rajshri. And I let them also talk about themselves when they are sharing their presentation. So I don't want to share everything too soon. The speakers will also be sharing about their background in their respective presentations. So yeah, that's pretty much the sneak peek for today, what we'll be covering in our talks. Next, I'll just wrap up with the slide. We always encourage our community member to reach out to us, and you can reach out to us through Twitter, Instagram, or follow us on all these social handles. You can tag us on Twitter, and you can always encourage to reach out to us. This is the Twitter handle that I've shared here for Vancouver and Legos network. Feel free to reach out if you have any question. And if you want to become a member of Women Who Code, that's the link. You can sign up and become a member, or pass it along who wants to become a member. Also, with that, I just want to share one more thing. This is the Vancouver. You can find Vancouver and Legos on Women Who Code website. So if you're interested in knowing more, what do we do? What is the Women Who Code network? Who to reach out for Legos? You can always hit the Women Who Code website and find us in the network pages. And with that, I'm going to stop share and pass it over to my first presenter, who is CC. And over to you, CC, for your presentation.
Yeah, thank you very much, Deepali, for that. Can you hear me, please?
Yeah, we can hear you very well, and we can see the slides as well.
Awesome. So give me 1 second while I prepare my slides.
Take your time, no rush.
Okay, thank you very much for that introduction. It was really nice. Anyway, so it's nice to meet you all. My name is Cici, Cici Duru. I'm happy to be here. I'm part of Women Who Code Lagos. I don't think you can see me, but yeah, this is me. So I'm part of Women Who Code Lagos, and I'm happy to be in the midst of all of us today. So today I'm going to be talking about coping strategies and overcoming imposter syndrome. Now, I know that several of us, we probably must have, had imposter syndrome at some point, in our career. And today I'm going to be uncovering a lot of things, regarding imposter syndrome, because I too faced that in the early days of my career. And feel free to ask any questions, like Deepali said, and I'll be very much happy to answer. So first, let me talk a little about myself and my experience. So my name is Sisi Duru. Like I said, I'm a DevOps engineer at Visa Europe. I'm part of the Women Who Code Lagos, and I basically have a lot of experience in software engineering, now DevOps, and I've worked on a lot of production ready products ranging from fintech, digital payment systems, which is what I do currently, to fleet industry, to mobile healthcare, and end-to-end maintenance of infrastructure and application all around. So today, I specifically would like to speak about a couple of things. So first, I want us to look into our career so far. Examine your career so far. Let's introspect a bit and try to see if we have actually gone through this process, or through this problem, or this syndrome, or if we're currently going through this syndrome, or and how we can be able to navigate through the whole imposter syndrome. Now, one of the first things I like us to look at, because in the early days of my career, I remember when I was working with a company in Abuja, Lagos, Abuja, in Nigeria. I mean, the Abuja part of Nigeria. And when I joined that company, one of the first things that happened to me was that I was a junior developer. Of course, I started my career as a front end engineer. So I was a junior front-end developer. The only thing I knew was HTML and CSS and a little bit of JavaScript. I mean, it was very basic. So for some reason, while I was at the company, I was told to, join the team. When I joined the team, I realized that because then the company was building internally generated revenue payment solutions for, like IGR in Abuja then. And so I felt that I wasn't good enough because most of the payment solutions that they had built was on Java and C Sharp and all of those sophisticated languages that I didn't know anything about. So imagine someone who only knows a little bit of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript joining a team like that. So I was really frustrated. So every day I go to work, I come back, I'm much frustrated than I was the previous day. And I wanted to quit the job at some point because I felt I wasn't helping the team. I started to ask myself a lot of questions like, how did I get here? Like, how did these people even, hire me after the interview? You know what I mean? So I'm at work, I'm sweating, I'm afraid, I'm anxious, and, all of that. But yeah, eventually I was able to, find my way around it, and that's pretty much what I want to share here today. So, these are the questions and statements that clearly define if you're actually going through a phase of imposter syndrome. Now, if you ever think that, oh, did I just get lucky, right? Do you ever think that, oh, this job that I have, am I really qualified for this, or did I just get lucky at this? If you ever think that way, then know that you're suffering from imposter syndrome. If you keep asking yourself questions like, what am I doing here? You're working in a company, or you feel like you're not good enough. You're asking yourself how you got there, what you're doing there, and asking yourself really like crazy questions like, um questions like, will I sound dumb if I ask, if I try to find out, get more information from my colleagues, if I try to ask the next person questions, will I sound dumb to the person, or would they think that they made a mistake hiring me? Did I even take the job, or did I just take a job I'm not qualified for? you know you start to tell yourself things like, oh, I'm not a software developer or a software engineer, I'm obviously just fooling myself and other people, and I don't deserve to be here. you know when your team realizes that you're empty, obviously they'll fire you. That's what your mind tells you. And the truth is, you feel like you don't deserve the success you're achieving, or that you made a mistake. And that's all of this thoughts and all of these questions are the offshoot of imposter syndrome. These are the things that amplifies the fact that you're going through a phase of imposter syndrome. Now, I want to define imposter syndrome so we can have an understanding of what it actually is. Now, imposter syndrome is the inability to believe that one's success is deserved or has been legitimately achieved as a result of one's own effort or skills. Now, where individuals privately doubt their own accomplishment, fearing they will fail and be unmarked as incompetent. So it's like a belief that you're not intelligent, creative, and you're not deserving of the success that you're experiencing, even though there's plenty of, evidence that yes, you're doing well and you're achieving what you're supposed to achieve. The truth is, at times like this, your confidence will start to plummet, and then you start to make mistakes after mistakes. You start to feel the stress of it all. You start to doubt yourself and your abilities at every turn, and you get nervous. Now, a little bit of nervousness is not a bad thing, don't get me wrong. However, it can sometimes turn into self-doubt, and that can become very crippling if we let it happen. Okay, so now I came up with this. I did some a little research, and I figured out that there are 5 different personality types that are most likely to suffer from imposter syndrome. And Dr. Valerie Young tried to explain each of these personality types. Now, the first one is the perfectionist. So while I'm talking about all of this, if you figure out that you are in, or you are experiencing, or you fall into any of this category, it's okay for you to diagnose yourself and tell yourself where you fall into, and then eventually I'll be able to explain how we can actually get ourselves out of it. Now, the perfectionist, for example, a perfectionist is someone who sets really high expectations for themselves, and even if they meet 99% of their goals, they're still going to feel like they're failures. And any mistake they make, every tiny mistake makes them feel like they need to question their own competence. They feel like they're not competent enough at any point in time. You know, that's a perfectionist. They set really high goals for themselves, and then when they fail to reach the goal, they're worried. They experience major self-doubt, and then they're trying to question their own competence, basically. So the next one I want to talk about is the expert. Now, the expert thinks that they should know everything, but of course, you can't know everything. If you're someone who thinks that, no, you measure your competence based on what and how much you know, or what you can do, right? Imagine a developer who can write code but cannot build a library. You're so mad at yourself that you cannot build a library, but you can actually write code and you're really, really good at it, right? But because you cannot build a library, you feel like you're not good enough, or you have not gotten to your expert level. Now, all these things just prove how much of imposter syndrome that you're experiencing, right? The expert feels like, oh, I'm an imposter because I don't know anything. I don't know everything there is to know about a particular subject or topic, or I haven't mastered every step in a process. Obviously, because there's more for them to learn, they don't feel as if they have reached the rank of the experts, and people will think that they're incompetent. But all of these things are happening in their head because, of course, if I don't know how many of you must have been in meetings, or you're joining a meeting of, maybe as a junior developer, you're joining a meeting of senior developers. You feel like you cannot say anything because you don't know enough. You feel like you need to know every piece of information before you can even start a project. And you're constantly looking for certifications and trainings to improve your skill. You don't speak up, you don't say anything in the meeting because you feel like if you say anything, you might sound stupid. And you feel like even what you have to say, people already know the answer, so it's best to just keep short. Now, that makes you an expert. Okay. Now, the next one I want to talk about is the soloist. So the soloist is someone who, their self-worth stems from their productivity. So they feel they should figure things out on their own. You shy away from asking for help because it seems like a sign of weakness or incompetence. Then you're a soloist. On the other hand, the superhero, deep down inside, you feel inadequate because you feel the need to, work as hard as possible. You feel the need to have to work harder and overperform and prove to everybody that you're really, really good at what you do. You're very competitive and you feel the need to show that you're better than everybody else. Okay. If you're not performing according to your expectations, I think you feel your effort is not good enough, and then you're stressed. You start to think like, you're an imposter. Now, you don't have to be a superhero, and I'll tell you why you shouldn't. Okay, now let's go to the next one, the natural genius. You ask yourself questions like, why am I taking so much time to finish just a simple task? You're expecting so much from yourself. You're putting yourself under unnecessary, undue pressure for no reason. You judge your competence based on ease and speed, as opposed to your efforts. Okay. If you take a long time to master something, you feel very ashamed. You feel like, it took you so much time to get something done, and it takes other people very short time. So in other words, you're not competent enough. You believe that you have to be a natural genius. You don't have to struggle, or put in too much effort to solve a problem. And if you have to do that, then your brain tells you that you're a fraud. So all of these things can actually stem from, family environment, the kind of environment you were born or how you were raised, the kind of pressure, social pressure that you're getting from all sides, having a sense of belonging, when you want to have a sense of belonging. So you're pressuring yourself so that you can measure up with society standard. It also could also stem up from personality, your kind of personality. you know these are the factors that could cause all of these things, right? So you need to understand the syndrome first of all. I'm going to what I'm talking about now is how to overcome this thing, how to overcome these problems. I'm sure you must have been able to identify yourself in one of the five things I mentioned in the previous slide, right? You must have been able to fix yourself somewhere. But you can even be part of one or two, or even more than two. It doesn't matter. What matters is how you can be able to overcome imposter syndrome, how you can be able to, brace up and deal with the problem at hand and figure out a better solution on how to fix, all of this. Now, you need to understand the syndrome. If you don't understand that you're going through or you're experiencing imposter syndrome, then you may not be able to find a solution. A problem that you have not been able to diagnose, of course, you may not know what the solution is. Mind you, imposter syndrome is not a medical ailment. It is not a mental health condition. It is actually a condition of the mind, right? That makes you feel that drains you of self-worth. Okay, that's what it's not medically proven that imposter syndrome is a mental health condition. So it all depends on how you have conditioned your mind to think and to believe, and that's what takes over. Anyway, so back to what I was saying. Understanding this syndrome is very, very important. You need to keep in mind that actual fraudsters do not have imposter syndrome. The fact that you have imposter syndrome shows that you're not an imposter. If you get what I mean? The fact that you have it shows that you're not an imposter. You're not a fraudster, because people who are actual fraudsters, they don't have imposter syndrome. Now, secondly, you need to acknowledge your feelings. Don't lie to yourself. Sharing imposter feelings can help you feel can help. How do I put this? For the lack of a better word, sharing your feelings can help you feel less overwhelmed. You need to be able to open up to people, tell them how you feel, and that can help you in turn realize that you're not the only one who feels like an imposter, and then you can change your mentality and in turn overcome imposter syndrome. Now, the next one is to embrace your journey one step at a time. You need to take it easy with yourself. Do not put yourself on any unnecessary undue pressure. Release yourself from the chains of pressure, and it will help you to be able to build yourself, build your career step by step. Learn a skill according to how it should. It will drastically reduce the pressure that's on you. All right. Now, the next one is to build connections. I always say it, do not forsake the tech communities. There's a reason why I say that all the time. You have to join tech communities, be active, because you need a network of mutual support. Avoid giving into the urge to do everything yourself. Remember, you cannot achieve everything alone. You need guidance. You need people to be able to, share your feelings with, people who understand the position where you are, to be able to work together, basically. Now, the next one is to challenge your doubts. Give yourself a chance. When that feeling surfaces, you need to ask yourself whether any actual facts, support these beliefs. You need to now look for evidences that can counter these beliefs. When you start to think that you're not worthy enough, find evidences that you have, that can counter these beliefs. Say, for example, you're considering to apply for a promotion at your office and you don't believe you have what it takes, or maybe you're trying to get into tech, but you don't believe that you have what it takes. Maybe it's just a small mistake you made on a project, a few months ago that still haunts you. Or perhaps you think that the co-workers who praise your work mostly just feel sorry for you. The truth is, fooling all of this your co-workers would be really like difficult to do, because you can't fool everybody. If you consistently receive encouragement and recognition, it's a good sign to show that you're doing a lot of things right and you deserve a chance for promotion. Okay? Give yourself a chance. Quit the comparison. That's very important. Stop comparing yourself with other people. You can't what's the word? You can't compare yourself with other people. Everyone is unique in their own ability. You know, you're where you are because someone recognized your talent and your potential. You may not excel in all the tasks that you attempt to do, but that doesn't mean that you have to, right? No one can do it all. Even when it seems like someone has everything under control, you may not know the full story. It's okay to need a little time to learn something new. It's okay if someone else seems to grasp, a skill better than you do. It's okay if you feel like a snail. You feel like you're so slow, and but you need to understand something. People are different and they're unique in their own way. So if you're slow, it's okay. Take your time. Don't compare yourself with other people. You know, um, keep track of your accomplishments. Have a list. Make a list of the things that you want to achieve, the things that make you feel like an imposter, and then start to cross them out one after the other. That can actually help you to know what you do not know. It's very important to highlight what you do not know and then what you need to know. And then as you begin to cross out that list, it makes you feel a lot more confident. Your confidence gets restored, right? So, to wrap it up, I'm just going to give a piece of advice, right? If you get to a stage where you think that, oh, everything is not working out, I'm talking to those who are newbies in tech, those who have just started their careers, those who have just, started a new job, those who think that, this whole thing is not working out. You're in a difficult place and you're asking yourself a lot of questions. I think it's best for you to step back and ask yourself, why you started this whole thing in the first place, why you were hired in the first place. Because if you were not good enough, no one would have hired you. The entire recruitment team cannot make a mistake. It's okay to fail. Failure is normal. You need to see the world as one big learning opportunity. You know, if you fail, you're going to get back up, definitely, as long as you keep trying. You're not a perfectionist. It takes time to become an expert. It takes time, it takes practice. Give yourself a chance, ask for help, stop beating yourself up. You don't have to. You just have to keep going, be consistent. You don't need to be a genius. If you want to be a genius, give yourself some time, continue to practice, and you'll be really good at whatever it is that you're trying to do. Stop trying to impress people. Stop talking nonsense, quench negativity. Stop filling your head with words that create stress. Don't put yourself under pressure. Don't let people put you under pressure. Be patient with yourself. We learn every day. The more you apply the knowledge, the better you become and the more confident you get. Nobody should expect perfection from you all the time. Not even you. All of these things happens in your head. So lastly, I'd just like to say this to all the managers and team leads. I think it's best for you to encourage the people on your team. Recognize their strengths and their weaknesses. Take the time to tell them that they've earned the success that they have achieved and encourage them to do better. Remember, sometimes you can have a bad day and sometimes you will struggle to figure out a problem. And sometimes it will take you a really long time, to figure out the solution on whatever project you're working on. That's totally fine. So thank you very much. I hope you learned a thing or two from this. Over to you, Dipali.
Thank you so much, Cece. To everyone, Cece has shared her email here and Twitter handle. So if you have any questions and follow up, feel free to reach out to Cece. And this was so inspirational talk, Cece. Yeah, I was making my own notes and build connection, give yourself a chance, do not compare yourself with others, keep track of your accomplishments are the notes that I have gotten out of your presentation. Yeah, it was a really good talk. Thank you so much, Cece, for doing it. Something that I recently started doing is just for myself, started doing my recording my accomplishments, and I have something called a brag document where I just write whenever I perform good and I got good comments and compliment from my coworkers, from my manager. It just makes me feel that, oh yes, I'm on the right track and I'm doing all the right thing which I can do. And also I'm making notes of the areas of improvement, so I know my areas of improvement, and also I can see my accomplishments, so that's where I can not feel and get into the feeling of imposter syndrome. So that's something personally I do. And I think CC also had it in her slide as well. Yeah, really good talk. Thanks so much, CC, for doing it. Um, yeah, that's all I just want to conclude this talk with. And if anybody has any question, you are welcome to ask that in the chat. I will now, CC, you'll have to stop share so I can we can hand it over to our another speaker who is Yang, and then Yang can share her screen and speak about the graph.
Yep. Thank you, Cece. That was very inspirational. I definitely have experienced those feelings. Sometimes I feel like I'm still experiencing them, but yeah. So hi everyone, my name is Yang. I guess I'll just dive right into it. So I'm gonna be talking more, I guess it's a slightly different side of talk. So I'm going to give a quick intro on graphs and graph databases and on the Apache Tinkerpop project, which I'm part of, and the open source community in general. So let me see if this works. Yep. Okay. So a quick note about me. I'm a senior software developer at Improving Vancouver, which is a tech consulting company. And I've been contributing to the Apache Tinkerpop open source project. I am a committer and currently a PMC member on the project, which is, I'll be talking about what it is in the second half. And then my hobbies are, I like hike, like Dipali said before, I love hikes here in Vancouver. And when I'm stuck inside, I play video games. I'm working on Zelda right now. But anyway, so I've pets. So I've got a cat and 2 dogs. So I also play with them. Okay, so a bit on the contents today, an overview. So I'm going to talk a bit about what graph and graph databases, what their uses, give a quick overview of what Apache Tinkerpop is, and also just a thing on the open source community. And just a quick thing, I tried my best to put all the information together, but it may not, if I make any mistakes, yeah, and hopefully not. And any opinions expressed in this are strictly my own. So I'll just dive into it. So graph and graph databases. So what is a graph? I'm sure you guys have encountered them either in your studies, but basically a graph is just simply at the simplest composed of vertices or nodes and edges or relationships. So a vertex is an entity of data. So as you can see in the graph below, it could be in here, it's just persons. There's Sam, Annie, Mark, Jack. And then there's edges or relationship. So it just represents a relationship between 2 vertices. So we have Sam and Annie, and the edge is friend. So that entails their relationship, they're friends. And so graph databases, and when we talk about graph databases, I think it's best to kind of compare with a database format we're familiar with, which are relational databases. So they are your normal data model as rows and tables, like list of records, inventory lists, etc. And they're a rigid data model. And so they're very good for querying information, but when you're trying to query complex relationships, it does require many joins between the tables, and that can be a very costly operation. So some of the popular databases, we get the MariaDB, Oracle, MySQL, PostgreSQL, and then IBM. And on the other side, we have graph databases, which is, as I explained, what graph is, it's data modeled as a set of nodes and relationships. So, just a note, I'll be using vertices and nodes interchangeably. And it's a very flexible and abstract data model. So graphs, you have vertices or nodes, and then you can add a relationship anytime. As the graph grows, it can change shapes, it can change I guess the landscape of it. So it makes querying complex relationships and modeling complex relationship much easier. So there are some popular databases out there. There's Amazon Neptune, Neo4j, Janus Graph, OrientDB, and TigerGraph, just to name a few. There's many more, just as with the relational database. So a quick thing also then on the data itself. So just to kind of show in cases where graph data might be more helpful in visualizing your data. So for example, we have relational data here with two tables. One is an airport table and with code, city, and country. And then the other table is the routes table. We have the source and destination. So if I want to write a query to calculate the ways of traveling from Austin to Atlanta with 2 stops. So I'm going from Austin, I want to stop somewhere, stop another, and then I want to arrive at Atlanta. So in an SQL query, you got to do multiple joins because you're trying to, infer the relationship across tables and maybe join on itself. And it can get taxing for it. So for graph data, on the other hand, where we can intuitively model nodes, airports as nodes, and then the edges naturally as the routes between them. So in this case, it becomes simplified where I can start at Austin, and then I can just say, jump out an edge, jump out another edge, and then jump out to the last edge, and then which arrives at our destination, which is Atlanta. So then, whatever that matches has the airport at the middle, and then 2 hops away or 3 edges away, then you get to your destination, and then just return me all the path. So here, the example query I have here, it's using what's called the Gremlin query language, which I'll get to later. But this is just an example. So within graph data, there are different ways of modeling. So graph models, so one of them is called the labeled property graph. So what that is that your vertices and edges, they contain labels and unique IDs. And then within each vertex or the edge, there is properties. So properties are often key value pairs that describes the node or just holds information on the node or edge. So I see it as a rather intuitive data model. So the example here, I have node 1 with ID 1 with a label person, and this person's name is Mary Smith. And then we have a node 2, it's a company. The company in here, it has multiple properties. So it's a name XYZ Corp, it's established in 2023. And then I can add an edge between them. I say person Mary is employed by XYZ Corp. And then with the label employed by, that's my third vertex. My edge. So edge ID 3. So the edge can also hold properties that describes the edge, the employed by. So in this case, she has the job title account manager. So I think that's kind of like an intuitive flow of information. And another very popular graph model is the Resource Description Framework, or RDF. So it's actually the standard model for data exchange on the web. It's constructed slightly differently, where the data is a set of statements. Each of the statements encodes a simple relationship. Basically, you got a subject, so like a resource, and then the predicates describe the relationship between the subject and then with the object. And so in this case, the nodes or the vertices and edges, they're purely unique labels. So they don't have properties in this case. So as you can see, something that expresses similar ideas as the label property graph is you get a subject of Mary Smith, and a predicate, she is a person object. So you can see each node or edge, they have their one unique label, and there's no properties associated with it. So these are kind of the two major graph models and their differences. And then going to talk about some use cases. So one of the very popular use case is fraud detection. So kind of like, when you're trying to get money laundering or identity theft or credit card fraud, these are very useful and helpful in catching those. So it's kind of like, imagine, if you're in a crime drama, when a detective is trying to link all the evidences between people and then see if there's any connections. So this is kind of like fraud detection here, where we get information on each person and the devices they're using and the entities and connections. And then we analyze how many hops they are away from a known fraudster. So then in a deterministic way of analyzing this, so if you're a business, you're like, okay, if this person is within 5 hops, so like 5 connections away from the unknown fraudster, maybe we'll decline their payment because they're highly likely to be a fraud as well. And then now, as we move into the age of machine learning and AI, there is a probabilistic way, which is just using machine learning to determine how likely a given network or a given graph is fraudulent. So it's a common use case. It's being used by financial companies and governments, and then there's also health networks, just insurance frauds, all that stuff. And also our favorite use case, identity graphs. So this is the power behind all the personalized targeted ads, recommendation systems. So basically what it's doing is it collects the data from many devices, account services, and it puts them into a single profile within a graph. It constructs a detailed profile on it. So these data are kind of, you have a persistent ID, and then maybe this ID is linked to a particular IP location, and then it's linked to a transient ID, and then you see it appearing in a different IP location, and it's clicking a different set of websites, and then you can kind of monitor that, analyze that, and arrive at the conclusion kind of like, oh, this person, maybe we're going to target this sort of advertisement on this person's mobile device at this particular time. So this is the power behind kind of our target advertising. And another is knowledge graph. So a knowledge graph, it just models all entities, relationships, and events in a unified graph. So basically, it's a very powerful graph. So it's actually what's behind the fraud graphs, and so it helps you infer relationships. So all the dotted lines are inferred facts. So for example, if you have a cafe that's located in Seattle, that's located in Washington, it's located in USA, we can infer that, oh, this cafe is in USA. That's a very intuitive way of thinking that. So but sometimes it's hard to see that from a different, say, a tabular form, so this is a very powerful use, and it's used to construct ontologies. And then going into these huge graph systems as the network and relationship we look into grows. So the machine learning via the graph neural networks comes into play. So this is kind of the graph side of the convolutional neural network that's been being used in a lot of the AI we see. So the financial crimes, drug discovery, recommendations, just as an example, it's very powerful, and it's kind of like in the forefront of the graph work right now. There's some there's Spark ML that people uses. I think Amazon Neptune has their ML pipeline as well, and yeah, so that's kind of like going into that, and that's kind of the general intro on graph. Well, if there's some questions, I'll take them at the end. So hopefully that wasn't too dense. And now into Apache Tinkerpop. So what Apache Tinkerpop is, it's an Apache open source project. So as we're talking about graphs, it's actually a graph computing framework for both graph databases and graph analytics system. So it's based on the labeled property model, and it uses the Gremlin query language. So by framework, what it does is that, so Tinkerpop provides a set of abstraction over, it provides core APIs, the traversal language, which different databases, vendors, providers, they implement into their system. So as a user, if I know Gremlin, if I know Tinkerpop, I can use any graph databases that's implementing the Tinkerpop framework. So that's kind of the purpose. And so a bit into the graph query language, Gremlin. So this is the graph traversal language of Tinkerpop. So it is predicated on the idea of traversal of data. It's kind of like walking over your graph of data. So the thinking of these called gremlin, because think of a little gremlin that's jumping from vertices and reaching to different nodes, and then it's going to retrieve all the data and then return it to you. So on the right, you can see it's like a simple graph, and then we get the gremlin. It's starting at vertex 1, and then we want to know who this Marco person knows. So we get the little gremlin. It's going to walk along the nose edge, and then it's going to grab the name Josh. You're like, okay, all right, here's Josh. And then it's going to walk to the other node that has nose, and it's going to say, oh, there's Vadas. So here's Vadas. So that's kind of like how the intuitive way to think gremlin. And whoops. Yeah. So the consequences is that this is a very procedural or functional data language. So basically it means you are in control of how you want to get the data. You have to tell Gremlin how you want Gremlin to walk across the graph and return you the information. So that is kind of like telling a query language that tells the engine how you want the graph, as opposed to normal SQL where you kind of just telling what you want from the graph. And so again, like Gremlin is a query language, one of the query language for graphs, kind of like how SQL is a query language for relational databases. And so with the Gremlin, there are certain Gremlin language variants to help users. So there's drivers in different programming languages, which can be used to connect to a remote server or a graph provider and issue these queries in the native language constructs. So basically, we have official language support: Java, Groovy, Python, C#, JavaScript, Golang. So you can see, it varies across different languages, and each language, they have their own semantics, their own little things you do with them, so that they differ a bit across. So there's implementation to support that. So we can write these queries in the native language formats. And then we also have third-party managed, which is there's C++, there's Clojure, Elixir, PHP, Ruby, Rust, and Scala. And if you want to get started with Gremlin, so like there's a very, very nice comprehensive getting started page on the docs. So the recommendation to get started is actually using the Gremlin console. So it's a REPL environment. You can see on the bottom right here, and it's recommended to just start with an in-memory graph database called TinkerGraph. So both of these comes with the Tinkerpop project. So as you can see, excuse me. So so basically it's a REPL environment. You can issue Gremlin queries. You can load into your console the in-memory graph databases. And so what this kind of snippet of query is, it's loading this modern graph into it, and then querying. It's telling me G.V means just give me all the vertices in the graph. So it's listing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And as you can see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 vertices in this graph. So Apache Tinkerpop enabled providers. So there's many different databases out there that implements Apache Tinkerpop. So just to name a few, we have there's the Aerospike, Amazon Neptune, ArcadeDB, Janus Graph, Huge Graph, Azure, Cosmos DB, Blaze Graph, Orient DB, and of course the native TinkerGraph. And there's many more. So I think, each of them have each database comes there with their own features and but they all enable Gremlin. So you can all use Gremlin queries to connect. And so if you're interested in learning about Gremlin, there's some great resources out there. There's our Apache Tinkerpop website, and there is the docs, which has some common recipes, some introductions, and the getting started page I was saying. There's reference docs and developer docs if you're interested in kind of just learning and joining. And there is a great resource, The Practical Gremlin. It's a free online book. I still use it. It's very awesome. I used it when I started, and I'm still learning from it. It's a very comprehensive guide and tutorial on what pretty much Apache Tinkerpop is, how to write Gremlin and the effective ways of Gremlin and just thinking in Gremlin. And there are two other very popular books on the graphs. So if you're interested, it's a practitioner guide to graph data. So kind of talking about how to think in graphs, why and how you would use graph in your data. When does it come into play? When do you want to use graph as opposed to a relational database, and when not to use graph? And also another comprehensive book on graph databases. It's our Graph Databases in Action. It's another great book to read. And yeah, and then we welcome to join any of the Apache Tinkerpop communities. So we have a Discord channel, which there's constant newcomers, either you're new or you are a graph provider. People chat, they ask questions. It's a very open and free environment. We have a Twitch channel that we do streams. So where every time we have a release on Tinkerpop, we kind of go over the newly implemented features and everything. And then occasionally we would bring on graph system providers to give a talk on, hey, what's the new with your graph databases. And then we have a YouTube channel actually that just holds all the recordings. And then in the future, we're planning to put more tutorial stuff on it. And then just last but not least, I just want to touch upon the open source community quickly. So open source software, I'm sure a lot of you have already come across. So basically software with code that can be inspected, used, and modified by anyone. And then the Open Source Software Foundations, they're a nonprofit organization that provides the needed ground for collaborative open source development, and it also provides the legal framework for all the contributions and contributors. Some of the well-known open source softwares, we have the Apache Software Foundation, we have the Eclipse Foundation, the Linux Foundation, and the Mozilla Foundation. So a way to get involved, which I would encourage if you haven't, just to get involved in the open source world, so there's a path to get involved. So like, there's the user, so anyone who uses the application. You become a contributor if you just by submitting like bug fixes or feature implementations to the code base. And then you become officially a committer, which is someone with right access to the code base. When you have gained expertise, or when you showed contributions, when you become a subject matter expertise in a certain part of the code base, or even in the overview of the code base. And these people, they review the PR, and then they approve these contributions. And then at the top level is a project management committee. So here I put the definition of the Apache software PMC definition. But basically it is the governing kind of body of a open source project. It has the responsibility of ensuring community health, ensuring the I guess the overall direction of the project. It oversees all the development work on there. All these are community driven, but there's a management committee that kind of serves as the overseer in a way. So it governs, and it also manages official releases of these projects. So so this sort of structure kind of applies to pretty much all the foundations. The terms might vary a bit, but yeah. So, contributing and getting involved. So like, are you working with or interested in using an application that's open source? Or are you actually working on a closed source software, but there is some open source version of it that you're interested? And then do you find areas you could improve in that? Maybe if you're like, oh, I'm really new, I don't know much about the code base, I'm still learning. Well, as you're learning, when you read the documentations, do you find that there's steps you could improve, things you could add to it that can help future users to get started? Are there issues that you found that you can report? Are there bugs where like, oh, I can just add a one-liner fix? Or are there features you're like, oh, it'd be awesome if I could have this feature in this code? So all of these questions, when you're asked, there are great opportunities to get involved and so it is a great way to kind of practice your coding skills. You can gain collaborative experience, and then you can find networking opportunities. And truly, like graphs, it's all about relationship building. And yeah, so with that, thank you. I wrap up. Hopefully that wasn't too dense. Yeah, so open to questions.
It was really good. Thanks so much, Yang. I do have one question for you. So
Okay.
you were talking about all these interesting things about these technologies, use for
Mhm.
fraud detection, cybersecurity, and stuff like that.
Mhm.
How did you educate yourself to learn all that? Like, what was the learning curve look like for you?
Oh, yeah, so I have to say that even with all these, like all the graph technology, I'm actually more in the Apache Tinkerpop side, like the developer side. And I'm gonna go to the resource page. Yeah, so like I said, these are great resources to get started in terms of kind of getting into Gremlin itself, getting into Tinkerpop itself, and then get into the graph world. So I'm actually currently reading this practitioner guide to graph data. It's a great read. I find that obviously the learning curve, I'm still learning myself. It's a big code base on this, and I think graph in general, it's really big. So I think I'm still on the climb for it, but the community, it's very acceptive of new learners, beginners, new contributors. So I think it really helps when the community is very supportive, and then you're open to asking questions, and when you're implementing I guess code for them, and then people are kind of responding to you and then giving suggestions. Yeah, so I think in terms of graphs, I think the best way to learn is by playing around with this. So if you're talking more specifically on Apache Tinkerpop, the best way is just to download the Gremlin console and Tinkergraph and just play around with it and get a feel of how it works. And then in terms of graph analytics, of course, I don't work in any of that side of things. I kind of learn them as I kind of learn into graphs. So these are also probably, I would say, the best learned as usages. So kind of like learning through like seminars, and yeah. So again, I think the best way to learn is be practical about things. So practicing the all the technologies there. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you.
Hope that answers it.
Oh, yeah, that does. Yes.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you.
There
Sorry,
are
any?
questions in the chat.
Yeah. I'm just going to read the question out because I don't know if you can see the chat, yeah.
Okay.
So Claudia is asking if, so what are the pros of the graph database over the relational databases?
So let me just go relational graph data. So that's kind of graphs. The advantage is kind of like when you're focused on the relationship between when you want to use graph, it's when you're starting to think of relationship between things. That's when you're getting into the world where maybe graph is better for your database, because it's a natural flow. Because if you think of graphs, I think what's a better way, just like kind of like this little graph here, right? Like you can have, when you're thinking the information you want to gather is who is Harry's friend, or who is Harry's friend's friends. And then, or in terms of fraud detection, it's like this customer is making a payment, then how likely are they to, given their transaction records, given their identity, their account information, how closely related are they to a known fraudster? And that's kind of hard to do when you have data in a tabular form. So I think it's kind of less of an advantage or disadvantage, more of how you're thinking about your data. I think that's the key here. So sometimes, you know, graph database might not fit your data. So yeah, and I would actually recommend, if you want to know more about, you know, how to get your data, what or when or why to use it, just the practitioner guide to graph data is a great one to dive into. Okay, and question, graph data more efficient in terms of speed and cost, or are they just more or less complex than just having to do SQL joins? I'm gonna try to interpret this, but I think the speed and cost, it's actually depends on the databases themselves, which I can't really speak to because I don't work with databases. I work with this framework of Tinkerpop. So I think but what it does is that in terms of modeling relationships, like when you're trying to see a network and see a relationship, kind of like detective work, right? Like when you're trying to make connections, this person has this connection to that event, maybe they're the possible suspect. That's when it's very efficient because you're just the information naturally flows as a kind of a relationship. So that's when the query itself is actually very easy, intuitive to apply rather than SQLs where it's kind of like you're joining. But in one sense, they're kind of completely different models. So it's actually hard to compare in that sense. And again, the speed and efficiencies, it varies through databases by databases. So it just depends on implementation at that point. And so if you're interested in picking out a database, then you just kind of try and compare your uses. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Sam.
Oh, thank you, Ria. I see you have.
With the interest of time, I think we also need to, like, go ahead with other presentation. And Yang, you're more than welcome to answer them in the chat.
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
if you're okay with that.
Yeah, I can do that. I will stop sharing.
Okay, thank you so much.
It's
really interesting. I went so into it. Thanks for the presentation, Yang. And then I will pass the ball to our next speaker, which is Rajshri. And Rajshri is going to be talking about VS Code using Python. Yeah, over to you, Rajshri.
Can you guys see my screen?
It's still loading. Hasn't loaded yet. Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I can see it now.
So thank you, Women Who Code Vancouver, for having me, and thank you to our guest speaker, CC and Young, for that great talks. Imposter syndrome, we have all been through it in tech. You're just like, what am I doing here? Especially as a woman, you kind of feel like you're out of place. So that was a great talk. And Young, thanks for talking about Graph. You know, working with data, it's a broad knowledge base, and you know, data is the most the valuable asset for every company. So that was both two great talk, but now let's talk a little bit more basic. How do you get started, right? How do you get started with programming, and how did I get started? I was working as a data analyst previously with various companies, and I loved Jupyter Notebook. I still love my original notebooks. I am the one that takes their pen and pencil and then walks everywhere. But how do you do that with your computer? So that's what we will learn. So we have this code VS Code. It's called that we use to write codes, and we will see how it works. What is Jupyter Notebook? How it works, and how it was made, and how do we install it in part of VS Code, what's the benefit, and some shortcuts. And then at the end, we will just write some few codes to see some fun activities. Yeah, so Jupyter Notebook, it comes from this three language. It's Python, R, and Julia. So that's how it gets its name. JU from Julia, Python, Pyte, and R is from the language R. And it has other like 40 other languages that it can like you can code in it. And so it's a very, like, you don't need to use your command prompt. It's right there. It helps you. But how does it do it? It has a backend where it talks to kernel. As you can see here, it talks to Jupyter Notebook, goes back in their kernel and shows you in your client in VS Code the results, and it uses the evaluation, print, and loop in Python environment. So that's how it was created, and it's open source, so you can use it. Other than that, you can also use Google Colab if you don't have VS Code or any other add-ons experience. So I personally, this is my own opinion, I love the kernel more than the terminal, because sometimes you have to rewrite the code or the shortcut into the terminal. Sometimes it's very like when you're sharing screen, it's very like not visually affected. It's very small. You cannot zoom in. So with the kernel and Jupyter Notebook, you see the result right there. You see the error. It's very neat. So it's very easy to also debug. You can type small codes and run and see where it's working and where it's not working. When you're starting to code, I feel like a lot of the syntax and other error gives you a little like scares you, but yeah. But I think VS Code's pretty simple. You just go into there where you can find all the installation, and you type VS Code Jupyter. You will see the Microsoft check mark, and then you will install that. You see, as you see, there are a bunch of others. The Jupyter key map. I will always prefer something where it has that blue check mark, so you know it's not a spam or something weird you're installing into your computer. And as you can see here, it's basically like a notebook. I will show you how I use it, and I used to use it for data analysts that I said, and there are a lot of libraries in Python for data visualization, which you can build your reports in there. You don't have to go back to Tableau, share Excel and all that stuff. You can just have everything in one place and send it to your stakeholders. So that's a great plus for it. It's very easy to share, easy to work with, and it can help you when you're starting your journey with coding. And here are some shortcuts. So let's go back to now VS Code so we can see how it works. So this is how VS Code looks like. Where is my screen? Yes. So this is VS Code. You basically go in here, you will type Jupyter. Once you see this, you just install it and it should be up to ready. But once you open it, you go to the first page. This is how you see it. And you can use your shortcut as Command Shift P, and it will tell you which one do you want to use. I have regular Python interpreter, but I want to use the Jupyter one. So I'm going to click on Jupyter. And here is my Jupyter Notebook kernel. So over here, we have two options, code and markdown. So markdown is basically like commenting. You don't have to go like command and then you type something and then you go back, Sometimes it's like a little bit messy. So what you just do, you just click on markdowns and you can just type in plain English. And you can just delete it here and you can say, welcome to Python 101, and that's your command. And you can use the code to write, let's say, to print hello world. And once you click this play button, you will see it right here. I don't know why is it a little bit slow. Is this: you go to the code and you look for what am I learning in that day, right? You can just say mark down and say, today I will learn. Type, and you have it quotations. We use quotation for a string. I would put my name and it will show you that this is the string, right? So what is string? String is any character that is used as a letter in Python. So we can also just say name equal Roy. And in place of Roy, we can now use name and it will show us the type because I use the type function here with the print to show you this, right? So this is how I use it. Use it as a notebook, like every chapter. You don't have to like go from this today I make this, let's say day one file dot py and then day two dot py, and then your laptop is like full of files and sometimes it gets confusing. So I feel like having one place where you can just keep on coding and you can come back and you can also review like what did you learn from the next day. Just to run it, you will have to do Control Enter and it runs it. I don't have anything here. It's not running. What happened? Or you can simply just click on the play button to run it. You can run all the lines at the same time just by clicking here, run all. So it runs all your lines. And if you want to clear, it just clears by clicking here and it will clear out. And you can just go from line by line to see, and you know, which one you want to see and debug. Any questions so far? So let's now try to build something. Some fun game since it's the weekend and everybody has been debating about which movie to go see. So we will do a little fun twist game.
Exciting.
And we can change if, let's say I mistakenly printed this into the code, we will click on this 3 dotted lines and change it to markdowns. So you see all the red weekly errors has been gone. So yeah, this is our code for today and what we will do. Let's try to just print what we wanted to show. I have the code, so it would not take us long. So we want to make an app that helps us, you know, which movie to go pick. So we will just print as movie date. First choice is Barbie, the second choice is Oppenheimer, and the third choice could be anything. I just chose this because this just came out. It's one of the Bollywood movies. And once you run it, you get the menu, right? But what do we want to do, right? We want somebody to help us because we want to see all the 3 movies, right? So one of the things we can use, we can import random. So that's a module where it will take your options and turn it randomly, and you have to put import random as ran, or you can also put it as random, but just to write it the shortcut, I prefer to write it as ran. And what do we do next? We can go and I will use one of the data structure in Python, which is dictionary movies. So I have option 1. So why did I pick this data structure over all the other data structure? Python has dictionary list and set as one of the data structure. I chose dictionary because it has a key value pair. So you see the key for Barbie is the number 1 and key for Oppenheimer is 2. So you have to, this helps the program to get the value that's located in the key. And so it's kind of faster. So that was my reason. And what else we are doing here? We are getting users input. So it can choose the key 1, key 2, key 3, and then we will try to compete against the computer or like just somebody else. So we can see what we will do next. We would also need to vote, and we will also need to play against the computer. So here we are using a for loop to range because we want to use it like 3 times. Like let's say we will do rock, paper, scissors 3 times, and we will choose whichever has the highest vote. We will go see that movie. And over here, we are using while loop to see while true, right? We're still playing, and we will keep on counting using this for loop. And this is where the dictionary data structure comes in handy, because you can use both. You can use the I to get the key and the J to get the name of the movies, because we're using movie.items. And over here we have computer, where computer is picking the random choice from the movie and the key and the list. So once we do this, it prints. So see, when you do this, you don't have to go back to the terminal. You know, you can see it here. It says, which movie do you want to see? We have seen earlier. So movie 1 would be Barbie, 2 and 3. So let's say I want to go see Oppenheimer. Just type 2. And it would say, okay, have some bugs. Okay, something happened. So with one more thing with Python, it has it is really strict with its indentation. You can use a tab or 4 spaces, but it's just easier to go a tab. You're there. Otherwise, you have to press space for the 4 times. Let's try to see if what did we. And once you see, so this is kind of, I think it's you having this issue in the while loop, because while loop tends to get running for a long time if it doesn't have a break statement or something. But for the notebook, you can just press the stop here, or you can just kill it, delete it, and it should be gone. Yep, it's gone. So that's another thing, because you don't want your computer to go in an infinite loop. It could crash your computer. So I think this kind of saves that also. And let me, we can also use the shortcut of Control A to highlight all, Control C to copy, and then we can do Control and / to comment all this out. These are some cool features of Jupyter Notebook. And we can just press again, Control forward again to make it non-commented. We also can use Command S to save. As you saw earlier, I pressed accidentally Control Save and it showed me this function. And the extension for Jupyter Notebook is IPYNB. So that's your file. Like we have .html is for HTML, .py is for Python. So we have .ipynb for Jupyter Notebook. So let's go here and see what did we miss. Control copy. I think it's because here. Yep. So when you run it, you see it's right here. You don't have to go back to terminal and press it again. Let's say you want to go see Barbie, press 1. Okay. So as you can see, I chose Barbie, the computer chose Oppenheimer, I chose Barbie again, and the computer chose Barbie. So we have one more round to play. Let's say I changed my mind, I want to go see Oppenheimer now. But since we already voted and we got that Barbie got the highest vote of all the 3 times we were playing, so it's saying, let's go see Barbie. And let me share some. So these are some resources. You can go learn more about VS Code. And one place I really like for Python is for W3 School. I will be also sharing that link. Yeah, I can't wait for you guys to go, start your journey as a programmer. I think Python is a very simple language to get started with. It's not so confusing. That's how I got started. My first language was SQL, but for mostly like data side. But then when I was learning actually C++ for college, I did not like it. So then once I found Python, I understood and I fell in love with it. And I'm still learning it. So that's something I really, really enjoy. And I hope you guys also give it a try. And yeah, that's it for now.
Thank you so much, Rajshri. That was really good to see. Cool stuff here. I learned some coding. It was really nice. I don't see any question in the chat. Looks like we are good and people have got so much stuff today. So almost we're towards in the end. I encourage every presenter, if you are okay, you can share your social profile in the chat so people can follow you. Ria has already shared Women Who Code Vancouver handles, so feel free to follow us on all those handles and connect with the speakers that presented today. If you have any follow